When the 97th Academy Award nominations were announced, one film stood out above all the others: Emilia Pérez, a French-made Spanish-language musical crime drama that led the field with 13 Oscar nominations, the most ever for a non-English language film. At first glance, that seems like a huge achievement, a daring musical about identity and redemption starring a trans actress in the lead role, breaking records and dominating nominations across categories from Best Picture and Best Actress to Best Original Song. But when you dig into what the film actually is, what it tries to do, and what it actually accomplishes, it becomes clear that the Oscars didn't just mistake ambition for achievement. They elevated it above films that were truly stronger in craft, emotional coherence, cultural authenticity, and narrative payoff. So I want to make a clear, honest, and analytical argument. Emilia Pérez did not deserve the scale of celebration it received at the Academy Awards. The Oscars rewarded symbolism over substance, confused risk-taking with success, and celebrated intention instead of outcome. And this matters not because the film is irredeemably bad, but because the disconnect between how it was received and what it actually achieves reveals persistent weaknesses in how major awards bodies evaluate cinema. Let's break this down. At its core, Emilia Pérez follows the story of Manitas Del Monte, a feared Mexican cartel leader who decides to abandon a life of crime and reinvent herself as a woman named Emilia Pérez, with the help of a struggling lawyer, Rita. This plot unfolds through a dazzling array of musical numbers, operatic, dream sequences, melodrama, and crime thriller set pieces, a combination that is so genre-bending it's almost impossible to categorize. That's typically the sort of ambition that awards voters love. We see Manitas undergo gender-affirming surgery, fake her death, and emerge as Emilia, a philanthropist who founds a non-profit to help families identify loved ones lost to cartel violence. She reconnects with her former wife Jessie and their children who don't know her true identity, and she forges a heartfelt friendship with Rita, who is both her legal facilitator and emotional companion throughout the transformation. The emotional arc culminates in the final act. Emilia is kidnapped, confesses her identity to Jesse in song, and in tragic confrontation, all three are killed in a car accident. A community sings a final ode, Las Damas que Pasan, celebrating renewal and loss. That sounds like a sweeping exploration of identity, consequence, redemption, and community, but the execution, at least from a narrative and thematic viewpoint, is deeply muddled. There are three key reasons Emilia Pérez resonated with Academy voters, none of which are inherently about the film's quality. 1. It's symbolically loaded. The film features the first openly trans actor nominated for Best Actress, a historic milestone. Awards bodies always pay attention to historical firsts. 2. It's audacious and genre-defying. A narco-musical about a cartel boss turned trans philanthropist is outside the normal cinematic playbook. Voters often reward risk, even when that risk doesn't work. 3. It aligns with narratives about diversity and progress. International Spanish language, LGBT-centered, female-driven. Emilia Pérez ticks many of the boxes the Academy likes to trumpet. But here's the critical thing. Symbolism is not storytelling, and in this case, the Academy seemed to nominate the idea of the film rather than the film itself. To be clear, Emilia Pérez did win 2 Oscars, Best Supporting Actress and Best Original Song, but most of the major categories it was nominated in were handed out to other films. So even within its awards haul, there is a gap between recognition and reward. Let's talk about that symbolism versus substance divide. Emilia Pérez portrays monumental themes: identity, transformation, masculinity and femininity, trauma, redemption, violence. But it often does so surface level, failing to commit to coherent emotional stakes. The musical numbers, while visually creative, often undermine the gravity of the cartel violence that surrounds the story. A song might cut rapidly to a dance number immediately after a threat of violence, blunting narrative weight rather than augmenting it. Similarly, the way the film handles the transition itself suggests the film is more invested in spectacle than understanding. For example, one clinical inaccuracy noted in reviews is a song about physical transition that treats biology simplistically, suggesting to viewers that a son can smell dad post-transition. And that's a profound issue. If you're going to make a film about transformation, it needs emotional or psychological coherence. Too often here, Emilia Pérez treats big ideas like identity and redemption symbolically, like props in a fantasy, without building a human through line that justifies them. Too often at major awards, risk and novelty are mistaken for excellence. Emilia Pérez is undeniably risky. Dozens of songs, crime drama beats, melodramatic arcs, identity exploration, and genre shifts are all crammed into a 2 hour plus runtime, but risk alone doesn't mean it works. The film never finds its emotional core. The transitions between musical fantasy and gritty crime drama are jarring, even baffling to many viewers. Elements like a love story between Emilia and a new romantic interest feel shoehorned, underdeveloped, and disconnected from the main narrative thrust. And while the film tries to mix caricature with emotional depth, it falls into stereotypical or exoticizing portrayals of Mexican culture, a choice that undercuts authenticity rather than deepens it. This points to a larger issue with risk in filmmaking. Risk should amplify insight, not obscure it. Emilia Pérez risks a lot, but when risk becomes chaos without coherence, the result feels scattershot rather than profound. The Oscars have always been about craft, but in recent years there's been a noticeable shift towards honoring films that mean well or represent something culturally significant, even if they aren't fully realized works of art. A great film about trans identity or corporal transformation must show us what that feels like, not just tell us it's important. Emilia Pérez frequently opts for telling through spectacle rather than showing through grounded drama, and that's the heart of why it was over-awarded. Voters saw the intention, the progressive, inclusive, global narrative, and equated that with excellence. But intention is not achievement. The film's thematic explorations often lack payoff. The redemption arc for Emilia is interrupted by an abrupt ending that doesn't satisfactorily resolve emotional conflict or fully interrogate moral consequence. The ending, rather than culminating in clarity, feels like a symbolic finale that leaves viewers mystified, not moved. That's a structural flaw, not an innovative choice. A big part of why Emilia Pérez feels hollow to some is its lack of cultural specificity. While set in Mexico, it was written and directed by a French filmmaker who doesn't speak Spanish and was mostly shot in Paris sound stages. Many Mexican critics and filmmakers have openly rejected the film, accusing it of trivializing cartel violence and lacking authenticity. A Mexican parody film, Johann Sacre Blue, was even made as a direct response to Emilia Pérez's superficial portrayal of Mexico. There's nothing inherently wrong with making a story about another culture, but if the film's emotional core and imagery are rooted in stereotypes or romanticized ideas rather than lived reality, the work becomes stylized to excess instead of anchored in truth. And the Oscars, in celebrating it, reinforce the idea that surface symbolic gestures toward cultural inclusion are enough. Before you think I'm dismissing Emilia Pérez wholesale, let's acknowledge what did resonate with audiences and critics. The actors' performances were widely praised, and also the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress was awarded to the film. Music, the song El Mal won Best Original Song and is one of the film's more incisive moments, brutally critiquing hypocrisy and complicity. Boldness. Few mainstream films attempt this blend of genres at this scale. There's something undeniably brave about that. But bravery and good intentions are not the same as mastery, and the Oscars should be honoring mastery in film. Ultimately, Emilia Pérez didn't deserve the dominant Academy Award celebration it received. Not because it's entirely without merit, but because the accolades were rooted more in what the film symbolizes than what it accomplishes cinematically. The Oscars rewarded symbolism over substance. A hopeful message and historical milestone were taken as evidence of artistic excellence. Risk-taking instead of narrative success. Bold ideas were mistaken for quality execution. Intention instead of outcome. Booker-like aspirations were celebrated even when the film didn't deliver satisfying emotional or thematic closure. This is not a dismissal of representation or ambition. It's a call for audiences and awards bodies alike to demand that meaningful storytelling be rewarding precisely because it embodies its themes, not just gestures towards them. And when the Academy confuses what a film wants to say with what a film actually does, we end up honoring potential rather than achievement. That's why Emilia Pérez became a sensation at the Oscars, and that's also why it was critically over-celebrated. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.